Welcome back then folks to the second build of Special Projects Pack 18 on day 3 in particular, and this one, as the touring car aficionados and the BTCC aficionados will immediately know, is not really a replica, because this doesn't match the car that actually would have raced. I believe a car which had some success, a 320i touring car. Of course this is an M3, so it's a two-door version instead, so very much a mishmash kind of build, but I did have a few people asking or recommending a touring car version of the M3, because of course we did the M3 lightweight in a previous pack, which is a fairly modest car, kind of looks more wild than it actually is, but it was a lot of fun, and I believe I even mentioned in that video that it showed the potential which it had to be a great touring car, so that's exactly what we're doing here in the iconic kind of finer BMW colours. So, as far as the build itself, and incidentally of course the link to the livery which this player's done is as usual in the description. As far as the actual build though, I'm trying to work it as close as I could to these kind of era of BTCC regs, but again, those who are familiar will know that A, it's too heavy, and B, it's too powerful. Those two things are actually linked. The reason why I've allowed it to have too much power, this should be more like, I believe, was it 300, 315, something like that at most, is because you cannot make it as light as it should be. The actual touring car, I believe, was about 1,000 kilos, which is quite a big difference to what you can make this one, surprisingly given that that was a four-door and this one's the two. But of course that was an actual race car, whereas this is turning a road car into it. So there's only so much you can do in terms of dropping the weight out, which is a shame. But again, that's my reasoning on allowing 350 horsepower to make up for the extra 150 or so kilos. Now in the ultimate section, you don't really need to worry about anything there. So if we go back to the sports stuff, of course you want your stage 1 weight. The comfort softs naturally come with it anyway. I know different people like different tyre levels for, how unruly of a race car you're trying to build, how more challenging you want it to be, what kind of point level you want to hit, so all that's up to you. As far as the club sports stuff, we've got the stage 2 weight, the power restrictor and the ballast. Oh, actually no, we don't have the ballast, I should say. As far as the semi-racing stuff, we've got the ECU, of course the fully customised diff. As I often do for a build like this, I've got the fully customised manual box, because then you have the control over the ratios if you want to change it, but also it gives you a bit of a point advantage, and it has that kind of raw, slightly laggy, old school feel. I actually have opted to increase the rigidity for this one, and as far as the weight, that is of course stage 3 also fitted. We've got the racing silencer. As far as the brakes, we've got the pads and the discs of course, clutch and flywheel, as well as suspension, racing hards. Like I said, some people might think that's wild overkill for a car with 350 horses, but it is a race car at the end of the day, so it's down to you. For the extreme stuff, the steering angle adapter, and like we already said, nothing on the ultimate section. So again, for a car with only 350 or so horses, it's actually quite a high point level. 630 is quite hefty, which goes back to what I said about some people might prefer, for example, to go to maybe sports mediums or sports hards to get it doubtless below 600 points. So I'll leave all that side of things down to you and what you want to achieve with the car. As far as the actual bits and bobs though, we've got the racing hards fitted. For the suspension, a pretty big sounding difference between the front and the rear, 100 on the front, 90 on the back. So technically lower on the rear, but if you take a look in the menu, it definitely doesn't look like that. It looks like the exact opposite, which is exactly why I've done that. As far as the anti-roll, quite high, 7, 25 and 35 for the dampers, 3.10 for the springs, so again very high there, 1.5 degrees of camber on the front with 1 on the back, towed in 20 on the rear and 5 out on the front. As far as the diff, triple 20, so similar to, what was it, the Alpha earlier on today. As far as the transmission, 280 on the auto setting, so possibly just a smidge longer gears than you might want. Give it a try, see what you think. Depends what kind of gear style you need for whatever track you're going to take it on. No ballast adjustment, no ECU or restrictor adjustment. I've opted for 100 on downforce for the front and the back, which as you could tell is a lot more on the rear. And over here, all of the stuff is of course fitted. So it's one of those builds where it's actually not as complicated as you'd think, given that you're taking an M3 and turning it into basically a touring car replica. But that of course brings us to the track. And when it comes to the track, of course it's not going to handle like the actual touring car because it has, I believe, a shorter wheelbase. It's the two-door M3 rather than the 320i four-door version, etc, etc. It's way heavier than it should be, it's more powerful than it should be. So again, it's one of those builds which is as close as we can get kind of vibe. In terms of handling, this one has, as I'll occasionally, it doesn't happen as often as it used to, but occasionally mention a car has kind of center pivot steering, where it feels almost like when you turn, the vehicle rotates from the center rather than the front end, where the steering actually is. It's hard to describe without actually experiencing it, but when you throw this into a corner, I think think you'll feel what I mean. It's very easy to control though. If it slips and slides just a little bit, which it doesn't do very much on racing tyres, then it's very easy to bring back in line. And to me, it has a pretty good touring car kind of vibe. Of course, we used to have I think it was 320i touring car of the newer shape, the E36 spec, which for most players probably wasn't a car they used all that much in Gran Turismo, and that was the four-door. So kind of a throwback, kind of not, kind of a replica, kind of not. But if you've got an M3 and you want to build a touring car, maybe just try something a bit different, then you could have a lot of fun with it. And you could maybe use it in career mode or online as well. So if you do decide to build up this car and have some fun with it, or even race it, I hope of course you enjoy it. Check out the builds which are still to come this week. Of course, the ones which we've already done, including earlier today. And for now, thanks for watching.